Her sister mocked him as too small, but everything changed by morning. Shadows of judgment, Lila. Chen smoothed her sleek lab coat and checked her watch for the third time. Her younger sister, May, was chronically late, a trait that had frustrated Lila since childhood. The upscale restaurant hummed with elegant conversation while Lila nursed her sparkling water, wondering why May had insisted on introducing her new boyfriend in such a public setting. Lila, May's melodic voice cut through the ambient noise as she weaved between tables, radiant in a flowing yellow dress that captured her perpetually sunny disposition. Behind her trailed a man who seemed to shrink into himself with each step. He was noticeably shorter than May, with narrow shoulders and a hesitant gait. His tweed jacket hung slightly loose on his frame, and wire-rimmed glasses kept sliding down his nose. "Sorry we're late. The greenhouse experiment ran over," May explained, embracing Lila before stepping back to present her companion. "This is Theo Evans, the botanical genius I told you about." "Theo, my brilliant sister Lila." Theo extended his hand with a gentle smile that barely creased his features. "Dr. Chen, it's an honor to meet you. Your research on extraterrestrial mineral compositions is groundbreaking." His voice was soft but clear, with an undercurrent of confidence that surprised Lila. She shook his hand briefly, noting the calluses that spoke of practical work despite his delicate appearance. "Please, call me Lila," she replied, gesturing for them to sit while covertly studying him. This was the man her vibrant, beautiful sister had been gushing about for weeks. May launched into animated conversation, her hands dancing expressively as she recounted their meeting at the university's interdepartmental mixer. Theo contributed occasionally, his insights thoughtful but delivered, with such modesty that Lila found herself straining to hear him over the restaurant's ambient noise. Theo's developing a new hybrid plant species that could revolutionize oxygen production in space habitats, Mai explained proudly. "Tell her about the photosynthetic efficiency breakthroughs, Theo." He cleared his throat, a flush rising to his cheeks. "It's still experimental. The molecular modifications allow for enhanced carbon dioxide conversion using minimal light wavelengths, potentially increasing oxygen output by 63% compared to standard vegetation modules." Despite herself, Lila was intrigued. "What about radiation tolerance? That's been the limiting factor in previous attempts." Theo's eyes lit up, revealing a startling intelligence behind his unassuming demeanor. "That's where the hybridization with extremophile algae comes in. We've isolated genetic markers that—" "Enough shop talk," May interrupted with a laugh. "You two will have plenty of time to discuss science tomorrow during the lab tour." Lila blinked. "Lab tour? I mentioned it last week," May said, frowning slightly. "Theo's coming to see your asteroid sample analysis. The botanical applications for space colonization?" "Right," Lila muttered, vaguely recalling an email she'd skimmed during a particularly hectic day. She'd assumed it would be just May, as usual. Throughout dinner, Lila watched her sister with Theo, how May touched his arm encouragingly, how she leaned in to catch his quiet words. There was genuine affection there, but Lila couldn't shake a sense of incongruity. May was a force of nature, deserving someone equally dynamic, not this whisper of a man who seemed like he might blow away in a strong breeze. When Theo excused himself to the restroom, Lila pounced. "Really, May?" "Him?" May's expression hardened. "Don't start. He's just so—" Lila gestured vaguely. "Diminutive. In every way. You're so vibrant and he's like a shadow. You spent an hour with him and think you know everything?" May's voice remained low but took on a dangerous edge. "This is exactly why I don't introduce you to the men I date. You always find them wanting." "Because they usually are," Lila countered. "You deserve someone exceptional." May leaned forward, eyes flashing. "Theo is exceptional. Just because he doesn't dominate a room doesn't mean he's small. Not everyone measures greatness by your standards." "Lila." The conversation abruptly ended as Theo returned, his gentle smile revealing no awareness of the tension crackling between the sisters. Later, as they parted outside the restaurant, Lila watched Theo help May into her coat with careful attention. He caught Lila's eye and offered a sincere smile. "I'm looking forward to seeing your laboratory tomorrow. Dr. Chen, Lila, your work could change humanity's future among the stars." Lila nodded curtly, unable to completely dismiss the genuine admiration in his voice. Still, as she watched them walk away, May's golden presence seemed to eclipse Theo entirely, confirming Lila's judgment. Her sister's botanical boyfriend was simply too small for someone as magnificent as May. Stranded in starlight, the Celestial Research Facility hummed with activity as Lila guided May and Theo through the main laboratory. Massive asteroid samples glowed under specialized lighting, and holographic models of molecular structures rotated in the center of the room. Technicians moved with practiced efficiency between workstations, barely glancing up as the trio passed. The meteorite fragments arrived last month, Lila explained, leading them toward a sealed chamber. We've identified several compounds never before seen on Earth. Theo moved closer to the observation window, his reflection ghostly against the reinforced glass. Remarkable, he murmured. The crystalline structure suggests adaptation to extreme temperature fluctuations. Lila raised an eyebrow, surprised by his immediate comprehension. Exactly. The molecular bonds reconfigure at different energy states without compromising structural integrity. Like the thermal regulation systems in desert succulents, but on a mineral scale, Theo observed, adjusting his glasses. Have you tested conductivity under vacuum conditions? Before Lila could answer, May's phone chimed loudly. She checked it and grimaced. Emergency department meeting. Budget cuts again. She kissed Theo's cheek and squeezed Lila's arm. I have to run. Can you finish the tour without me? Lila stiffened. May, I have the stability test scheduled. Perfect. You can show Theo how they work. May was already backing toward the exit. I'll try to make it back before you finish. Moments later, she was gone, leaving an awkward silence between Lila and Theo. We can reschedule, Theo offered quietly. Lila checked her watch with a sigh. The tests are already calibrated. We might as well continue. She gestured toward the restricted area. This way. The specialized testing chamber was Lila's domain, a state-of-the-art laboratory where she subjected extraterrestrial materials to extreme conditions. As they entered, the automated system greeted her. Good afternoon, Dr. Chen. Stability protocol prepared and awaiting initiation. Begin sequence, she commanded, then turned to Theo. Stand behind the yellow line. We'll be simulating various planetary atmospheric conditions to test mineral reactions. Theo positioned himself carefully, watching with evident fascination as robotic arms moved samples into testing stations. Despite herself, Lila found his focused attention gratifying. The blue specimen contains traces of organic material, she explained, warming to his genuine interest. We believe it may have supported primitive microbial life. Similar to lithotrophs on Earth, Theo nodded. Organisms that metabolize inorganic compounds. The chamber hummed as the first test began, bathing the samples in controlled radiation. Lila was explaining the spectrographic readings when the building shuddered violently. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting activated moments later, casting everything in an eerie red glow. A computerized voice announced, "Power failure detected. Emergency protocols engaged. All non-essential personnel, please evacuate immediately." Lila rushed to the control panel. No, the cooling system. What's happening? Theo asked, his voice remarkably calm. The asteroid samples require continuous temperature regulation, Lila explained tersely, fingers flying over the backup controls. Without proper cooling, the more volatile compounds could become unstable. The security doors slid shut with an ominous thunk, sealing them inside. Containment protocols activated, the system announced. Laboratory sealed until stability confirmed. Lila slammed her palm against the panel. Override. Authorization Chen Alpha 927. Unable to comply. Manual override disabled during containment procedures. Theo approached cautiously. How long will containment last? Lila ran a hand through her hair, disheveling her usually perfect bun. Until power is restored or the samples stabilize. Could be hours. She shot him an apologetic glance. I'm sorry. You're trapped here because of my work. To her surprise, Theo smiled slightly. Actually, I believe we're trapped here because of a power failure. The unexpected touch of humor made Lila pause. She studied him in the crimson emergency lighting, noticing for the first time the quiet resilience in his posture. The auxiliary power should maintain minimal cooling, she said, moving toward the samples, but we need to manually adjust the containment fields to prevent molecular degradation. Theo removed his jacket, rolling up his sleeves. Tell me how I can help. For the next hour, they worked in tandem, Lila calling out instructions as they carefully adjusted equipment to maintain the delicate balance of the extraterrestrial materials. She was surprised by Theo's dexterity and quick understanding of her complex equipment. "You're good at this," she admitted, watching him calibrate a handheld scanner with precision. "Plants have taught me patience and careful observation," he replied. "Living things don't respond well to rushed hands." As the immediate crisis subsided, Lila found herself studying Theo more carefully. His movements were deliberate and graceful, belying her initial impression of awkwardness. When a sample unexpectedly shifted, threatening to crack, his reaction was instantaneous, steady hands stabilizing the container before Lila could even call out a warning. "You have excellent reflexes for a botanist," she remarked. Theo smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his features. "Greenhouse accidents happen more often than you'd think. Flying pots, falling equipment, it's practically an extreme sport." Lila found herself laughing, the sound echoing strangely in the red-tinged laboratory. As the night stretched before them, isolated from the outside world and surrounded by starlight captured in stone, she wondered if perhaps her first assessment of Theo Evans had been too hasty. Blooming in darkness. 3 hours into their confinement, Lila sat cross-legged on the laboratory floor beside a small portable heater they'd found in the emergency supplies. Across from her, Theo carefully distributed the meager provisions from the lab's safety kit: 2 energy bars, a packet of dried fruit, and several bottles of water. "Not exactly the dinner I had planned tonight," Lila remarked, accepting half an energy bar. "Still better than my graduate school meals," Theo replied with a slight smile. "I once lived on nothing but ramen and spinach from my experimental garden for 2 weeks during finals." Lila studied him in the dim light. "Why botany?" she asked suddenly. "Most brilliant minds in the sciences go for physics, chemistry, fields with more recognition." Theo considered the question, adjusting his glasses in a gesture she was beginning to recognize as habitual when he was formulating thoughts. "I've always been fascinated by resilience," he said finally. "Plants survive in environments where nothing should thrive. They transform poison into sustenance, adapt to hostile conditions, communicate in languages we're only beginning to understand." He looked up at the glowing asteroid samples. "Not unlike your space rocks." "They're a bit more than rocks," Lila protested, but without her usual defensiveness. "Exactly my point about plants," Theo countered with unexpected animation. "People dismiss them as just plants, but they're sophisticated organisms that have solved problems humans still struggle with: sustainable energy production, efficient resource utilization, cellular regeneration." His passion was transformative. In the crimson emergency lighting, his face came alive with conviction, eyes bright behind his glasses, hands sketching invisible patterns in the air as he explained his vision for botanical solutions to humanity's greatest challenges. "The hybrid species I'm developing could potentially grow on Mars with minimal human intervention," he continued. "Imagine landing modules containing seedlings that transform the environment ahead of human arrival." "Terraforming through botanical means," Lila murmured. "The energy requirements would be significantly reduced compared to mechanical methods." "Precisely." Theo leaned forward eagerly. "And your mineral research could help identify which extraterrestrial compounds might support or inhibit growth." For the next hour, they exchanged ideas, their conversation flowing with increasing ease and excitement. Lila found herself sharing research challenges she rarely discussed outside her team, while Theo offered botanical perspectives that illuminated unexpected solutions. When the temperature in the lab began to drop further, they moved closer to the heater, shoulders occasionally brushing as they huddled around the warmth. Lila became acutely aware of Theo's presence, the clean scent of his skin, the thoughtful pauses before he spoke, the gentle cadence of his voice. "Your sister mentioned you grew up in Singapore before moving to the States," Theo said as they shared the last of the dried fruit. Lila nodded. "Until I was 12. Our parents were both researchers at the National University." "That explains the competition between you and May," he observed quietly. "Competition?" Lila frowned. "What do you mean?" "The way you watch over her choices. The protective instinct." His perception was unsettling. "May talks about you constantly. Her brilliant sister who won every academic award, who sets the standard impossibly high." Lila looked away, uncomfortable with his insight. She exaggerates. May has always been the charismatic one, the one people are drawn to. You're both exceptional in different ways, Theo said simply, but you measure yourself by achievements while May measures herself against you. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of equipment running on auxiliary power. Lila wrapped her arms around her knees, considering his words. Did May tell you about the accident? She asked finally. Theo shook his head. We were swimming at East Coast Park. I was supposed to be watching her, but I was reading a book on astrophysics, showing off to some older kids nearby. Lila's voice grew quiet. May nearly drowned. If a stranger hadn't noticed her struggling. And you've been protecting her ever since, Theo finished gently. Trying to, Lila admitted, not always successfully. Theo was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he reached out to touch a small potted plant on a nearby workstation, one of Lila's experiments in extraterrestrial soil composition. Some plants need space to develop strong roots, he said, his fingers gently testing the soil. Too much protection can stunt their growth. The simple wisdom in his observation resonated more deeply than any reassurance could have. Lila found herself studying his profile in the dim light, the determined set of his jaw, the kindness in his eyes, the quiet strength she'd overlooked at first glance. The soil's too dry, she said, changing the subject. I've been neglecting it. It's resilient, Theo replied, his fingers brushing against hers as they both reached for the water bottle. Like its caretaker. The accidental contact lingered, neither of them immediately pulling away. In that moment, surrounded by alien minerals glowing like captured stars, Lila recognized an uncomfortable truth forming in her consciousness, one that complicated everything. Constellations of truth midnight passed in the sealed laboratory as Lila and Theo sat shoulder to shoulder against the wall, sharing a thermal blanket from the emergency supplies. The asteroid samples glowed with subtle phosphorescence, casting nebula-like patterns across the darkened room. It's like being inside a planetarium, Theo observed, his voice soft in the stillness. Lila nodded, aware of the warmth where their bodies connected. I sometimes stay late just to watch them in the dark. Each sample contains its own universe of possibility. That's how I feel in the Arboretum at dawn, Theo said, when the first light filters through the glass and everything's still and expectant. They had moved beyond professional discussion hours ago, venturing into personal territories, childhood memories, professional disappointments, quiet dreams rarely voiced aloud. Lila found herself telling Theo about her failed mission application to the Lunar Research Station, a rejection that still stung years later. I had the qualifications, she confessed, but the final assessment cited insufficient adaptability to team dynamics. Their loss, Theo said simply, with such conviction that Lila found herself smiling. Your turn, she prompted. What's the failure that shaped you? Theo was quiet for so long that Lila thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice had a different quality, more vulnerable, stripped of its usual careful measure. I was engaged once, to my research partner at Cambridge. His fingers traced invisible patterns on the blanket. She was brilliant, charismatic, commanding, someone who filled every room she entered. Like May, Lila said softly. Similar energy, he acknowledged. Everyone was drawn to her, including me. We developed a breakthrough hybrid that earned international recognition. Then came the offers, prestigious positions, speaking engagements, research grants. Let me guess, she took all the credit? Theo shook his head. Worse, she believed in me more than I believed in myself. Kept pushing me forward, insisting I take the lead. Face the cameras, speak at conferences. She thought she was helping. But you weren't ready, Lila realized. I had panic attacks before every presentation, started dreading the recognition that should have been rewarding. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't embrace the spotlight. His voice grew quieter. One night after a particularly difficult symposium, she said she couldn't keep diminishing herself to accommodate my smallness. The word hung between them. Smallness, the very quality Lila had assigned to him upon their first meeting. She was wrong, Lila said firmly, surprising herself with the intensity of her conviction. Theo turned to face her. In the ethereal glow of the asteroid samples, his features seemed more defined, his presence somehow larger. What changed your mind? he asked, his perception uncomfortably acute. Lila considered deflecting, then decided on honesty. I mistook quietness for weakness, reserved nature for lack of passion. It was short-sighted. We all make judgments based on first impressions. Not all of us are proven so thoroughly wrong within 24 hours, she replied with a self-deprecating smile. Their eyes met and held. The air between them seemed to crystallize with unspoken recognition. Lila became acutely aware of how close they were sitting, of the subtle scent of earth and clean cotton that surrounded Theo, of the gentle strength in his hands that had worked alongside hers with such precision all night. May, she began, then faltered. May, Theo echoed, a complex emotion crossing his features. He shifted slightly, creating a small distance between them. She's remarkable. She is, Lila agreed, feeling a confused tangle of loyalty and disappointment. She sees the best in people immediately. Unlike her judgmental sister, Theo's hand found hers under the blanket. Different perspectives, both valuable. May sees potential instantly. You require evidence, which is equally important. His touch sent an unexpected current through Lila's body. She knew she should pull away, but found herself instead turning her palm to meet his, their fingers interlacing with tentative precision. Evidence has been compelling, she whispered. The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged. Theo leaned forward slightly, hesitated, then with gentle resolve closed the distance between them. His lips touched hers with questioning softness. Lila knew she should resist, but the connection felt inevitable, like molecular bonds forming under ideal conditions. She responded with equal gentleness, her free hand rising to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat accelerate beneath her palm. The kiss deepened slowly, carefully, a mutual exploration rather than a claiming. When they finally separated, both were breathing unevenly. That was, Theo began. Complicated, Lila finished, regret and desire warring within her. She disentangled their hands and moved away slightly. May is my sister, and my friend, Theo said quietly. A friend I care for deeply. Lila stood, needing distance to think clearly. I don't understand. If you and she aren't, we aren't, Theo confirmed, rising to face her. Not in the way you assumed. Understanding dawned slowly. She was matchmaking, Lila realized. The dinner, the lab tour, she was introducing us, not presenting you as her boyfriend. Theo nodded. May thought we'd connect intellectually, that you needed someone who could understand your work, challenge your thinking. And she never corrected my misunderstanding because you're stubborn, he supplied with gentle humor. And she knows your protective instincts would have immediately rejected any obvious setup. Lila shook her head in disbelief, equal parts relieved and embarrassed. She's going to be insufferably pleased with herself. Only if we tell her, Theo said, stepping closer again. And only if this is something you want to explore further. The laboratory suddenly brightened as the main power systems hummed back to life. Overhead lights flickered on and the computerized voice announced, power restored. Containment protocols lifting in 60 seconds. Reality intruded on their isolated world of connection and revelation. Soon the doors would open, staff would return, and the night's strange intimacy would be replaced by ordinary daylight and professional distance. Lila looked at Theo, really looked at him, seeing now the quiet certainty in his stance, the perceptive intelligence in his eyes, the gentle confidence that had nothing to do with physical stature or commanding presence. I think, she said carefully, that I'd like more evidence before drawing conclusions. His smile transformed his entire face, revealing a brightness that Lila now wondered how she had ever missed. I've always believed in thorough research, he replied, taking her hand once more as the containment doors began to slide open, admitting the first light of dawn into their transformed world. Dawn's reflection, the sunrise painted Lila's apartment in gold and amber as she poured 2 cups of steaming tea. Across the breakfast counter, Theo examined her collection of small meteorite fragments displayed in a glass case, each labeled with its origin and composition. Your private museum, he observed, accepting the cup she offered. Souvenirs from significant discoveries, Lila explained. Reminders of the vastness we're exploring. After being released from the laboratory at dawn, they had departed separately. Lila to oversee the recovery of her research systems, Theo to check on his greenhouse experiments. But a text message exchange had led to this impromptu breakfast, both of them operating on no sleep yet strangely energized. "I called May this morning," Lila said, leaning against the counter, "to apologize for misjudging her intentions." "And?" Theo looked up from his tea, expression curious. She laughed for approximately 3 minutes straight, then said about time and hung up. Lila shook her head with fond exasperation. "Apparently she's been plotting this since you mentioned my research paper during one of her classes." "I may have expressed particular admiration for the author," Theo admitted with a slight smile, "though I didn't realize she was the professor's sister until later." Lila studied him over the rim of her cup. In morning light, Theo looked different, more substantive somehow, his quiet presence filling the space with calm certainty rather than diminishing it. His rolled-up sleeves revealed forearms marked with small scars from greenhouse work, telling a story of dedication and practical application that complemented his intellectual brilliance. "Why did you agree to her scheme?" Lila asked, genuinely curious. Theo considered the question. "Your research on extraterrestrial compounds parallels my work on adaptive plant biology in ways I found compelling. Professionally, the potential collaboration was intriguing. And personally?" Lila pressed. "Personally," he set down his cup and moved around the counter to stand before her. "I was intrigued by how May described you. Brilliant but isolated, passionate about discovery but skeptical of connection." "She makes me sound positively hermit-like," Lila protested mildly. "She said you judge everyone by impossible standards," Theo corrected, his eyes holding hers, "including yourself." The observation struck uncomfortably close to truth. Lila placed her cup beside his, buying time to formulate a response. "High standards protect against disappointment," she finally said. "And against surprise," Theo added gently. "Against unexpected discovery." He reached out slowly, giving her time to move away if she wished. When she remained still, his fingers traced the line of her jaw with delicate precision. The touch sent warmth cascading through her body, reminiscent of the night before but intensified by daylight and conscious choice. "I'm still your sister's professor," he reminded her. "Any connection between us would require professional boundaries, disclosure to the University Ethics Committee." Lila smiled at his methodical consideration of consequences. "Always the scientist." "As are you," he returned. "Careful observation, thorough analysis before drawing conclusions." His hand cradled her cheek now, and Lila leaned into the touch, allowing herself to acknowledge the attraction that had developed with surprising speed yet felt remarkably solid. There was nothing impulsive about this connection. It had been built on shared intellect, mutual respect, and revelations that went beyond surface impressions. "And what conclusion have you reached, Dr. Chen?" Theo asked, his voice lower, closer. Lila answered by closing the distance between them. Unlike their first hesitant kiss in the laboratory's otherworldly glow, this one began with certainty. Her hands found his shoulders, discovering unexpected strength beneath his modest appearance. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him with gentle insistence. The kiss deepened, conversation giving way to more elemental communication. Lila found herself pressed against the kitchen counter, Theo's body aligned with hers in a way that sparked both intellectual and physical chemistry. His fingers tangled in her hair, dismantling her customary neat bun until dark strands cascaded around her shoulders. "I've wanted to see it down since we met," he murmured against her neck, following the admission with a trail of kisses that made her breath catch. Lila's hands moved beneath his shirt, exploring the surprising definition of his torso. Lean but solid. "You're full of unexpected qualities, Theo Evans." Their exploration continued with scientific thoroughness, discovering sensitive places, preferred pressures, the exact angle that made breath hitch and pupils dilate. When they finally paused, both breathless and disheveled, sunlight had fully claimed the apartment. "I should go," Theo said reluctantly, his forehead resting against hers. "Graduate lab sessions begin in 2 hours and I need to change." Lila nodded, equally reluctant to end their time together. "I have a department meeting at 10. Neither moved immediately. The newness of their connection seemed too fragile to release into the ordinary world of professional obligations and public personas. "Dinner tonight," Theo suggested. "My place? I make an excellent risotto with vegetables from my experimental garden." "Bold of you to offer experimental food to a scientist," Lila teased, smoothing her rumpled blouse. "I trust your adventurous spirit," he returned with a smile that transformed his features from pleasant to captivating, given recent evidence. As they finally prepared to part ways at her door, Lila found herself reflecting on how thoroughly her perception had transformed in less than 24 hours. The man she had dismissed as too small now filled her thoughts completely, his presence more substantial than men twice his size had ever been. "What are you thinking?" Theo asked, catching her contemplative expression. Lila considered deflecting with something lighter, then chose honesty instead. "I'm thinking that measurement is relative, that the most significant elements in the universe often come in unassuming packages." Theo's eyes softened with understanding. "Like neutron stars, immense mass contained in modest dimensions." "Exactly," Lila agreed, touching his face one last time before opening the door. "Small but mighty. I prefer concentrated brilliance," he replied with a grin. Lila laughed, the sound bright and unrestrained in a way that surprised even her. As Theo stepped into the hallway, he turned back with quiet confidence. "I'll see you tonight. Dr. Chen, bring your appetite for discovery." Watching him walk away, his posture straight, his steps purposeful, his presence somehow filling the corridor despite his modest stature, Lila understood with perfect clarity what her sister had recognized immediately. Greatness came in many forms, and the most profound connections often defied initial judgment. She closed the door with a smile, already anticipating the evening ahead and all the unexpected discoveries that awaited beyond the narrow confines of first impressions.